Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and the glorious return of Take It or Leave It, the show where you, dear listeners, send us your hot takes and we either take them or we leave them. On this episode, we're fielding spicy takes on relaxing the throw-in rules, moving the New England Revolution somewhere else, Walker Zimmerman's prowess, and much, much more. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, it's your friend, it's my friend, it's the Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor Rockwell.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. Excited to be here. Excited to talk more soccer and do some Tioliing with you. It's been a while.
It's been a while indeed, Taylor. I'm looking forward to this one. And, of course, the acronym Tioli, which all the cool kids are using. Thank you for reminding us.
Got to do the hand gesture as well. It's not the full title without the hand gesture, right? Tioli. I'm excited.
Tioli.
We've not done one of these in like a long time. That's a different sort of hand gesture.
Okay, my mistake.
Oh, we've just been censored by YouTube.
There we are. Good start. Joe Larry, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I genuinely think the Tioli shorthand is awesome. And I do think that all the cool kids are doing it because it's great. And they should be. If they're not already, they're about to. Boom.
Well, hey, Joe, did you hear where all the cool kids are hanging out? Did you hear?
Tell us.
We've got a Discord. And I don't think I've ever mentioned it on the air,
No.
on the episodes before. But
New
if you head to
ground.
Patreon. Yeah, here we go. Exclusive here. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. And you can access our Discord where all the cool kids are hanging out and giving us Tioli takes, take it or leave it. So you can do it there, and it's lots of fun. Come and join us in there. Bonus episodes and bonus video as well. Best way to support us is via our Patreon, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Please and thank you. And we're on YouTube where you can see some offensive hand gestures already if you check out this episode. Joe, you look astonished at something. Are you astonished at something?
I'm always astonished. I'm astonished at your ability to host. I'm astonished at our ability to tackle hot takes with expert precision. It's just a beautiful thing.
Wow. You've teed us up nicely there for the first hot take, Joe, which comes in from AJ from the aforementioned Discord. It's one Taylor's not going to like, probably. Here we go. Being relegated would be good for Man United. They get parachute payments and be able to cut the wage bill while rebuilding the club itself.
I mean, it'd be
Taylor,
good for Joe. We wouldn't have to talk about them on Weekend Review.
No. That would be the worst thing. That would be the worst thing that could happen to us because we would talk about it.
Yeah,
and it would go on forever. It would go on
I
forever.
imagine we'd do a big thing episode about that at the very minimum, for Man United being relegated. Taylor, I've heard this. There's a few people, like my father-in-law is a Man United fan who says we should get relegated and clear house, etc. and so on. It's very Thanos to me. Burning everything down to start again. It feels quite drastic. Is it a hot take that you buy into, Taylor?
Yeah, somehow it never occurred to Thanos that with limitless power, you could go the opposite way and just create more resources. You don't have to kill everybody. You could go the other way. And in that way...
No, he only killed half of everybody, Taylor. Let's not exaggerate.
Yeah, my mistake. Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I would say similarly, I think Manchester United being relegated would not be a great idea. I don't know if it would be as negatively impactful as half the population of the galaxy being destroyed, but I do think it would be a bad idea because it makes them even more of a laughingstock. It makes them even more of a thing that will be ripe for parody and mockery. But I also think there is no guarantee that you are able to kind of right the ship of the championship. Everybody's going to be gunning for you. It will be the source of much hilarity if they start to lose games in the championship. I think it has just as many potential negative drawbacks as it does theoretical positives.
The thing about this is I don't have any faith in Manchester United to build back, and by dropping down to the Championship, there's a chance that after 2 seasons they're like, oh no, we are stuck in the Championship, and basically they are another Leeds United, and there's just no like the Premier League is so competitive now. There's no guarantee that, number one, you'll get back up instantly, and number two, that you will go up into like top 4 contention immediately. So yeah, I don't see a shortcut back by doing this.
In like the relatively modern era, the only comparison I could think of would be Juve, and that's obviously not relegated for performance, but for match fixing. And even there, it's sort of then an outlier. They have some of the stars stay with them. They come right back up. Things kind of stayed as they were, and it wasn't like the team was in free fall and relegated and then bounced back. I think, generally speaking, when teams are relegated, it is not a good sign, and they are not guaranteed to come back at all.
Can I very quickly just put some numbers on this? So basically, Manchester United, I tried to work out what being relegated would cost Manchester United. So I think it would cost them about 80 million in equal share TV revenue. Also, let's just say Manchester United finished 13th, which is where they are now in the table. That gets them around £25 million in prize money, whereas if you finish in the bottom 3, it's £9 million at most. parachute payments, they work out at average of 33 million for your first season, and then they diminish season on season for 3 seasons. So I would make it that Manchester United would lose out on about £63 million by going down. Ooh. That would be the lump sum that they would lose just for one season.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's going to be easier to rebuild with that £63 million in your pocket than without it.
Yeah, this is the hardest of hard leaves. Like, before you even get into any of the narrative stuff, Graham putting some real numbers to this is absolutely my cup of tea. I had gone through and done something similar. Their TV revenue could effectively be a quarter of what it is now. And The Athletic had a good little video about this. Commercially, to look at some other revenue streams, Manchester United have generated £600 million over the last 2 seasons. That would take a massive hit. Looking at just one piece of that puzzle, Adidas, who are the Manchester United jersey supplier, Adidas could reduce payments by 50% from $90 million to $45 million a year, or just cancel the whole thing after a season. That probably wouldn't happen, the cancellation, but you would bet that Adidas would slash the amount of money, because they can, the amount of money that they are paying to Manchester United. And that is just one example of many, many examples. This is before we even get into the transfer conversation, where, all of a sudden, for playing for Manchester United sounds even less appealing than it already does when that is in the Championship and not the Premier League. Now you are at a competitive disadvantage in every single negotiation that you're in, because players want to leave. Teams that are buying those players know that, and you don't have any leverage whatsoever. This sort of thing would cost Manchester United hundreds of millions of pounds. And if we're talking about this being like a learn your lesson type of situation, I don't think getting relegated and being humiliated further actually moves the ball down the field any further. I think, there's a point at which a stern talking to can be helpful, and then maybe you move forward a little bit and it's not actually helpful anymore, and you've just been yelled at for an hour and you got the message in the first minute of that conversation. I think that's sort of where we are with Manchester United, and I don't know that they need to be screamed at anymore in this weird illustration that I put together.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Joe. Just to make the quick counterpoint, I guess it would maybe make it easier to rebuild that squad, right? Where it makes it easier for you. I'd imagine there's clauses in those contracts.
You think? I bet there aren't.
No, I looked this up. That's a good point as well. The Telegraph reported, this was back on December 31st, that there are, quote, no relegation contracts in Manchester United's salary negotiations with players. Apparently there's a 25% reduction of player salaries when they drop out of the Champions League, but nothing to do with dropping to the Championship. Obviously I can't speak to the veracity of that, but yeah, this would cost Manchester United so much more money than we've even scratched the surface of.
I take back what I just said. It actually would make it a lot harder for them to rebuild their squad, because those players are clinging on to those contracts.
Yeah, I even think, like, if you're Chelsea and maybe Villa to some extent, do you make like the moves for Sancho and Rashford permanent, or are you like, have fun with those wages in the Championship, guys? Like, just saddle Manchester United with even more debt. And Joe, to your point in what the Telegraph wrote, I really hope the contract says when, like, that it is an inevitability that they crash out of Champions League places. Not if that condition were to be met, but rather, we all know it's going to happen, so let's just put that in as a guarantee in the contracts.
So, I'm not hearing a lot of support for this take, but on the other hand, funny?
Yeah, actually, you've won me over. Taking it.
Right. I think that's why I'm taking it. But
I wouldn't say that's good for Manchester United. I would say that's good for everyone else that doesn't like Manchester United.
Good for the neutral. Yeah, that's a fair point. I suppose I did have visions of Jim Rapkier saying, how much are those parachute payments? But before considering this one. But yeah, you're quite right. Financially devastating scenario. But one that, is there not any argument to sort of cleaning house and completely having a reset?
I mean, there is a strong argument to do that. They should be able to do that in the Premier League, though.
Correct.
Right. There. All right. There we go. AJ, thank you very much indeed for your hot take. We go now to Peter Shark, Peter Shark, who has been in touch via our Discord. All new USL teams should start in the bottom tier. You think you're a tier 1 team from the jump, do you? Huh? Prove it. Also, that's a part of the excitement of Pro-Rel. Seeing teams find their level, it creates storylines. Joe, I'm there in principle, but how? Do we have like a 40-team promotion in the first season? I'm not quite sure how we execute this one.
And the good news is, Ryan, you're not alone on that. I think the 4 of us are all in that same boat, and USL is in that same boat of not really knowing how all this is going to work. I am taking this. I'm totally here for this, and this isn't just because teams like Phoenix Rising and the Oakland Roots, shout out to the Oakland Roots, gives them an easier path to playing in Division 1 for USL because they're already in the door, but also because I totally agree with Peter that the excitement of Pro-Rel is seeing is the actual movement of the teams. That's literally the whole thing. And I'm very eager to see how that all shakes out. I do believe, and I haven't listened to the whole interview yet that Devin Kerr did with Paul McDonough, president of the USL. I do believe that there is some discussion about, generally we want to try to funnel teams towards the bottom of our 3-tiered system, League One being the bottom. Makes perfect sense. Great job, England. And like watch them move up rather than just handing out free tickets to Division One. There is a practical reality that if USL wants to get this off the ground in the next few years, they need to find, unless the Pro League standards get really changed a lot, which I don't know that you can count on. The USL will likely need to find some new D1 teams and just get those in the door from the start. But as a general principle, I like this a lot because it's fun to see teams rise through the ranks, and it's way more exciting to have a team end up in Division One after getting promoted there versus just expanding into it like American sports have always done.
Joe, can I ask you, like, my concern with this would be, though, that if you do this, you are pushing up teams that maybe weren't financially ready to be in the top tier, in that top flight, and obviously you're already going to have to get sort of special dispensation when it comes to stadium size and certain requirements along the way. But if you have teams that aren't really ready for it, moved into that top flight, and then you have teams that are spending a ton of money in the second division, isn't there a risk that in your opening season, the second division is potentially better than the first?
No, I don't think so, or at least not in a way that matters, right? I don't, who is going to be complaining about that in a real way, that there's a really good team that's kind of taking the second division by storm. They're going to get promoted, and everybody's going to be happy the next year. I guess I kind of hear what you're saying.
I think it's an easy way to mock the league. If you don't buy in, or you have a vested interest, cough, cough, MLS, in this not working, being like, look at that, their top flight isn't even that good. The second division's better. What are these guys even doing? Like, I think it's an easy way to make fun of the league, which maybe doesn't matter, but I think optics do when you're starting out something like this.
I think USL will be thrilled to have people mock their league because that means people are paying attention to what happens. No, I'm being serious. I'm being serious.
I get your point. Like they're talking about it. They're paying attention.
The USL needs storylines, and how all this shakes out is going to be a storyline. It's a pretty in the weeds storyline. That's our bread and butter right there, folks. But how teams move and the unexpected weird stuff that happens along the way, I think those are all going to be positives. And I just have a really hard time picturing somebody being like, "Oh man, they left this team in the third tier and they look really good." Like, I don't know. I just don't think that's really going to create a lot of complaints. Also, because I don't really think this is going to happen. I think the USL is absolutely going to go out there, find new markets, plop them into D1 with new, 12,000 seat stadiums, and that's going to be how they finish building out D1. Rather than doing this, we will see part of this. We will see new teams come into the league, and I would imagine those would be heavily tilted towards the bottom tier. But I'm still here for it. I'm still taking Peter's take.
Yeah, I'm taking it as well, Joe. And I even think from a commercial point of view as well, I think there's a lot of upside to starting at the bottom and working your way to the top, right? But there's nothing more thrilling in soccer than a promotion charge. And what better way to get fans on board than having that momentum? And I look at Wrexham. Right? Would they have as much excitement around them if this would never happen, of course, but hypothetically, for the sake of this argument, if the EFL had just dropped them into the Championship, right? Or if they'd just been dropped into the Premier League, they wouldn't have that journey, they wouldn't have that story. They certainly wouldn't be able to build as compelling a documentary around it. I don't know if any USL teams are going to do that, but
I hope so,
I think even from a commercial point of view, there could be upside to starting at the bottom and working your way up.
I realise I fundamentally read this question wrong in that I was thinking when they started Pro Rel, everyone would be in the bottom tier and you'd have to sort of filter your way up, which is obviously not what the question is asking. I am taking it because I think it is the way of things that you should work your way up from the bottom. But Joe, to your point of them sort of slotting in teams in D1 straight away, they're going to do tiered franchise fees, aren't they? It's going to be 3 times as much to join D1 as it is to join the third tier, right?
You would think, they're already doing that, right? So it's already, last I checked, about 4 times as much money to join the championship as it is to join League One. I'm fascinated to see how all that stuff's going to change from a fee perspective, because if you can spend $15 million less to just go into League One, right? So $5 million expansion fee versus 20, and then spend that $15 million to make the best team in League One by a country mile and set yourself up for years of success, because that's what you can do with $15 million. Spending on facilities and mostly on players and staff and talent, stuff like that, then something about the model doesn't work anymore in the way that it's currently constructed. So something is going to have to change. But to what you're saying, Ryan, it does seem like a no-brainer, honestly, to have the D1 fees. If you want to go straight to D1, you can in this limited window right now as USL is trying to scale. You can do that for the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever. But yeah, you're gonna have to fork over 40 million instead of 20 million, or 50 million instead of 20 million.
I mean, that is the issue, I think, and probably going to be the stumbling block, if there is a stumbling block for this actually happening, is that a lot of teams have already paid that USL Championship fee, and now if you have Pro Rel, you don't have to once you're getting in there. So I think there will be teams that maybe don't love the system or want to make sure that they are financially compensated for the expenditure they have already put in, versus a team going into a lower division where there's a lower barrier for entry and then being able to spend that way. I think there will have to be some sort of like revenue sharing, parachute payments. Ryan's balloons agree with me. I don't know why Ryan keeps getting video effects. There was a thumbs up on your face earlier in recording. It's slightly distracting. My
this
last
is the
question.
AI we were talking about on listener questions yesterday.
See, it's taken
Ryan's
over.
already got it. Ryan's...
I think you all have swayed me to take this one. However, like you all are saying, like start at the bottom and then it's a better story. If everybody is sort of put into there, including teams that do have like wealthy financial benefactors who would be starting in the top flight, except they're being forced to start in the lower division, is that the bottom? Like if you're making 4 billionaires start their club in the bottom division, like yeah, they started there, but they weren't really starting there the way other lower division teams are starting there.
And also, like, not everyone can have a story. So you've got 4 billionaires going, it's my story! No, it's my story!
Yeah, right?
Wow.
I will buy the story from you three.
There's also probably a calculation to be made. If it's, let's say, for the sake of numbers, it's 20 million less to go into the second tier. Do you do that and spend 10 million more on players and get out of it in the first tier, and you've come out net 10 million?
Well, and these are all... It's a great point, Ryan, and these are all real discussions that are happening. Right? USL needs to figure out what their model is for promotion and relegation, not least because that is like the whole thing here, but also because if you're trying to attract new owners, if Ryan Bailey is thinking about shelling out 50 million for a D1 team or 20 million for a D2 team, and obviously he is, your calculation is going to be different if you know that the two teams that finish on top of the second division in the USL pyramid go up automatically. Your calculation is going to be different if that's the case versus if one team goes up automatically, or if there's no automatic spots and it's just a playoff system, because then there's a more element of chance added into the equation. Until USL figures out what the structure is going to be for how teams move, I don't know that they can properly value how much it's worth, or that prospective owners can value how much it's worth to them to figure out where they want to be on the pyramid, because it could be a 12% chance that you go up in your first year. It could be a 3% chance you go up in the first year. And that has real monetary value and risk associated with it.
There we go. Thank you very much indeed, Peter Shark, for your take. We take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking Walker Zimmerman, we're talking New England Revolution, and much more. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to Tioli, as we're calling it, with hand gesture as well. Thank you very much, Graham. JCO54 has been in touch with this hot take on our Discord. Walker Zimmerman is still one of the best 2 centre-backs in the USMNT pool. Graham, takey or leavey?
Oh boy, I'm struggling with this one because the centre-back pool is just such a blob of nothingness. Another thing that is confusing about this pool is even players who have played well at club level, they come into the national team and they all basically play the same. Nobody ever stands out in that centre-back position. So, yeah, struggling with this one. I think all things considered, Tim Ream is my number one right now. He is older than the USA itself, but when I watch the US play, he still seems like the dominant presence in that team. I think his passing out from the back is good. It felt like, not that he had a great game, but against Panama it felt like he was covering mistakes a couple times made by others in that match. So I think he is into the top. This is where it gets real confusing for me, because Chris Richards clearly has, in my opinion anyway, a higher ceiling than Walker Zimmerman, but Richards has looked really ragged for the US recently. I also think CCV is playing better for Celtic than Zimmerman is for Nashville. But then CCV comes into the team against Canada and he's not snapping into tackles. He just seemed a bit lethargic. I don't think he really impressed. So I will take this one, but only because I am thinking of number 2 in my pecking order as 2 or like 4 people on top of each other in a trench coat, and I can't really differentiate between any of them and Walker Zimmerman, I think of at this point. At least he is like a threat from set pieces, is what I'd say from about Walker Zimmerman. And with the US really struggling to score goals at the moment, that is something that is really valuable. But yeah, I think I'm taking this, but only because the pool is so murky at the moment. I'm not really convinced by anyone.
Taylor, wade into the murky pool with us and tell us whether you're taking or leaving.
I will. I'm really excited to hear Joe's answer for this one, because I think Joe will probably have the best, most statistically well-backed answer. No pressure, Joe. This was one that I was instantly sort of like, oh, okay, I have an answer for that one. Moving on, when I first read the questions. Then I went back and read it, and then I thought more about it, and looked up some data, watched some footage of Walker Zimmerman, starting to think that maybe there's some truth to this one. Largely for the reasons that Graham has already outlined. I don't have a ton of faith in a lot of the center back pool, and a lot of them have not risen to the occasion, whereas I don't really think there was a reason for Zimmerman to be out of the conversation. I thought he was solid in the World Cup and in World Cup qualifying. I think he misses the Copa due to injury. I might be wrong on that one, but it just feels like we have sort of kind of moved on from him as a viable option. I think a lot of the criticism about him related to his ability to move the ball with his feet. He has some good passes in the World Cup. He threads the needle for Pulisic on at least one occasion that I remember. So I think he's better with his feet than maybe people like to give him credit for, but then is also dominant in the air, has a good partnership with Tim Ream, who I agree with Graham is probably the most reliable center back in the pool right now. I think there's a compelling argument. I think a lot of that argument could change if Chris Richards had 3 really good games in a row for Palace. It might shift the other way. But for right now, I think I'm taking this unless Joe fully destroys the idea. Joe?
I don't think I can destroy the idea. I'm leaving this, but I mean, I
I'm
don't think
leaving
it's
it
like
too. I've long felt this way.
I don't think it's like an outlandish take. That was well done. Graham, you mentioned set pieces. I think I said on yesterday, or Wednesday's show. That was not yesterday. I think I said on Wednesday's show that I think Zimmerman, I'm really all scattered now. I was talking about set pieces and how the U.S. has maybe low hanging fruit to grab from set pieces, and Zimmerman fits that agenda certainly. But by and large, outside of set pieces, I just think Zimmerman is a level below the Ream, Richards, McKenzie trio that I think is probably the U.S.'s top 3 center backs right now. Zimmerman, I guess it's a slightly in contrariness, nailed it, to what you said, Taylor, about Zimmerman and his distribution. I don't think he is great on the ball, certainly not under pressure.
I didn't say he was great. I said he was okay.
And I think Ream, to Graham's point, Ream he is set apart in his distribution right now for the U.S. Is very much vulnerable defending in transition, but has that sort of skill. And I think Richards and McKenzie are like very clearly better passers of the ball than Walker Zimmerman. And Zimmerman is a dominant aerial defender, which again has value, but I think is very much beatable by attackers at high levels of the international game in open space. And that's not different from Trusty or CCV or Miles Robinson or even McKenzie or Richards or Ream. But when you take away the distribution ability that Zimmerman has, and I think he doesn't have a lot of that, I come out with a player who doesn't have Ream's passing as like a plus trait, and a player who is not as well-rounded as McKenzie or Richards, and ultimately I just end up tossing Zimmerman into the hat of that next tier of center backs afterwards, and it gets really mushy.
I accept all that, Joe, but that's why I made the point of performances for the US. Like Chris Richards, I think for Palace, clearly playing at a higher level, is having an all right time of it at club level. You see him come into the US team. I really wasn't impressed by Richards against Panama. I haven't really been impressed by Richards for the US for quite a while. So I merged that with what Taylor was saying about why did Walker Zimmerman come out of this pool? Like he was fairly reliable for the US. It felt like there wasn't like a big blunder or a nightmare match that he had, a disaster class game, a quicksand game. And so that's where I kind of land on, yeah, let's give Walker Zimmerman another shot. But that brings me full circle to the idea of this pool being a blob and no one really standing out.
Well, that's where I come back around to, like, I don't see a lot of value in bringing a 31-year-old back into the pool. Like, I don't know. If it's all blobby, you might as well allocate minutes to the younger players. I know that's not what this take is about. This is about who is the best center back. But I personally do not think that Walker Zimmerman is one of the 2 best center backs in the pool. I think he is 4th best at best in this group, and that he doesn't bring as much value as Ream, Richards, or McKenzie. But I take your point. It's not like those guys have dazzled for the United States. Ultimately, I think I've made this pretty clear in the past. I don't feel super strongly about this, but if I actually have to give an opinion, that's what we're here to do. Yeah, I think I'll leave this one.
Joe, I'm looking at FBref for a moment. I don't know if you can answer this one, but they have Walker Zimmerman's pass completion rate at 87%, but that puts him in the 31st percentile. I then look at Tim Ream, who has an 84.5% pass completion rate, and that puts him in the 91st percentile.
Is Tim Ream listed as a fullback on FBref? That would be my first guess. Yeah, Tim Ream's a fullback and Zimmerman's a center back.
Thank you.
That's why.
Okay, that makes more
Boom.
sense.
Mystery solved.
Sean
And
Whiting also.
yet Zimmerman has more progressive carries per game.
Yeah, Zimmerman does like to get forward.
saying.
I'll give him that. Set piece merchant.
He just can't
No
get
doubt.
back. Once
Yeah,
he's
the
up
US
there,
needs
he's
that.
up there.
The U.S. needs more good center backs. Please.
I
find
think
them
right now
somewhere.
I would put him third. I don't enjoy Mark McKenzie as a U.S. center back. I hope that can change. I feel like he is good for one obvious mistake a game that makes me uncomfortable, and I don't think his other aspects fully make up for that ahead of other players. So I would probably do Chris Richards ahead, though, still, just because I have faith in him, I think, more than anything else. But I take Joe's point that Zimmerman is probably not top two.
Good stuff. Thank you very much,
In your face, Graham, you were
JCO54.
wrong. Got him.
Vikings unite. I wish I was a Viking. They tried in Scotland and failed.
Is that your fault? I'm not sure. Maybe it is.
My ancestors' fault, surely.
Classic Ruthens.
Classic Ruthven behaviour. JCO54, thank you very much for your hot take. We go now to Justin, who submitted this via our Discord. There would be more goals if they revised the throw-in rule to just needing two hands on the ball when throwing. Anything else goes. So, this is interesting. Joe. I like this one a lot. I was thinking originally if you revised it to like one hand and you could throw it like goalkeeper style, like Peter Schmeichel, who could throw
Which
it
is
half
how
the
they
length of the
already
field.
throw the ball.
Yeah, we're talking about you, Weston. That's right. You heard us.
I mean, okay, that's a point in itself. Like the handball, the throw-in rules, are not super well enforced across any league at the best of times. I think it's probably fair to say. But is there, Joe, a world where you take this and there is a way to get the ball into the box that makes this game better?
I think so. I think I'm taking this. Right. I think you can probably generate a little bit more power on your throws if you don't have to have both feet on the ground, right? And be, what is it? You're also kind of supposed to be squared up to the field. I think
Ball behind the head and all that, yeah.
Yeah, I think you could totally find ways to huck the ball further, and that I think would create more action. We're already seeing teams start to throw the ball into the box more often, and that is leading to more goals on throw-ins where they're basically treated as a set piece. If you could throw the ball faster, and if there are generally fewer restrictions to you getting the ball back in play, and to where you can get the ball in play by being able to throw it farther, yeah, I love this take. I think if you can mess with the throw-in rule a little bit, it's pretty small and subtle, and probably does increase some attacking verve in some of these games. So I'm here for it.
I'd even be in favour of something that isn't subtle with throw-ins. I think I've said this on the show before. I think throw-ins are really stupid. It's this weird thing that doesn't have any other relevance in the game. You're not using your hands at any other point. The one player who does use their hands on the pitch doesn't take throw-ins. It's just this weird thing that doesn't fit in soccer, and so
They're
to
not
then
on the pitch, Graham. They're off the side of the pitch, technically.
Well, right, okay, technically. I mean, a
must
lot of the
feel
time
really
players
silly
are
right now.
on the pitch. There's a guy at Stirling Albion games. Every single foul throw, he shouts, "Foul throw, ref!" And the thing is, he's right. Like 50% of throws are foul throws in modern soccer.
And the
So,
other- Yeah, and the other 50% are taken from 10 yards away from where they're supposed to be.
oh
taken.
yeah, that's the other thing. Where's he going, ref? Where's he going? That's the other shout. So I just think throw-ins are really silly. To demand it be done in like a certain way, that it must come from above your head and you have to have 2 feet on the ground. Why? Like the purpose of that moment is just to get the ball back in play. So yeah, I think throw-ins are really weird. So I would change it up.
Taylor, for the record, I am taking this merely because I want to see throw-ins underhand granny style
Oh,
throwing.
Yeah.
That would be good, just for like little short getting it back into.
I mean,
it.
that
So,
would be better, right? That would
so-
surely be better.
So I think that to me is the difference, Ryan, because I truly, like, I don't know if, like, feet on the ground, hand behind, if that, like, is, as long as you're using two hands, I don't think you can throw that much farther no matter what you're doing. Even jumping in the air, I still think you're losing, like, velocity. That's why NFL quarterbacks keep their feet on the ground, but they're throwing with one arm. If you could throw with one arm, I think we're getting a lot more into the mixer play. But to your point, Ryan, I think, like, doing a chest pass when the ball goes out of bounds to play a teammate in or get the ball right back into play, or go underhand granny style if you want, I could see it having an impact that way. I think we should just go, like, like one-armed throw-ins in the attacking half. That's the rule. You have to throw it with one arm instead of two. Then you can just launch that sucker into the box and create some chaos.
I mean,
Yeah,
Ryan,
one on
I don't know
throw-ins,
whether
by the way. That was my favourite song by At the Drive-In from the early 2000s. Just going to say. Sorry, Graham.
There was also a fugitive joke to be made, I think, about a one-armed thrower. But yeah.
Ryan, I don't know if you were joking about the underarm granny style throwing, but that to me would make more sense because soccer is largely a game played on the ground. So it's weird to me that they're like, you have to throw the ball in from high up into the pitch. Throw-ins are really weird, and also how often do players get bogged down in throw-ins where basically you can only do two things with throw-ins, right? Either chuck it up the line and you take your chances, you play the percentages, or you play it short. Someone comes to you. How many times do we see players get bogged down in that situation where they waste like 20 seconds of a game because they can do neither? It would quicken up the game as well if we change throw-ins.
I have a thought on that one, and by I have a thought I mean Mark Clattenburg, I believe. Have you seen the interview with him talking about what he would do with the throw-in rule?
I have not.
Because he goes into detail about how basically, to your point, Graham, it is a known thing, at least amongst officials, that is how teams can waste a considerable amount of time. Is you do the 15-yard run forward, knowing that people are going to complain. Then the ref says, like, stop, you got to go back. Then you walk backwards. Then you're like, have I gone far enough? No, I haven't gone far enough. Then you walk too far. Like, no, you got to go back. Then eventually, if the ref decides he's going to come over and book you, that in and of itself takes time. And then even after the booking, once the ref finally allows play to resume, they're going to take another 5 to 10 seconds to throw the ball in. His idea was, if you don't take the throw within, I think, 5 seconds of having your feet set, whistle blows, other teams throw and going the other way. And now if you've committed numbers forward on the throw and you've taken too much time, the other team can just pick that ball up and launch a counterattack with their throw. So it becomes a benefit, but also punitive at the same time, throw-ins. And I'm kind of into it, even if it kind of fundamentally changes the rules of soccer at the same time.
Yeah. And to reiterate, I'm definitely in for the one-arm throw-in as well, just because, as I mentioned, if you can get someone who like a Schmeichel and you get a throw-in from on the halfway line and you get it right into the box, that's just more exciting, right? That's more action in the final third.
It is. The thing that and I know I advocated for taking this, the thing I am worried about, though, the longer we talk about this, is throw-ins actually taking longer if we don't do the thing that Taylor said. Because if you can huck the ball into the box from half field, go get your big lads up into the box and that's what we're seeing across the game right now is when there's a throw in the final quarter of the field, teams are throwing the ball into the box and you got to get the center backs up first and you got to get a center back to take the throw in, and it takes longer because teams are treating it as a set piece when it's kind of is, but it's kind of not. And if you can throw it further, which I know I advocated for, then I'm worried that this is going to become like a rugby thing where the play stops and everybody goes and stacks up and it takes forever and is a little dull. So that's what I don't want to happen. So maybe Taylor's thing combined with Ryan's thing. Klatz.
I hear that,
Shout
Joe,
out to Klatz.
I hear that, Joe, but that kind of already happens, right? Like if it's late in a game and a team wins a throw-in.
Yeah, but this would happen way more is the point that I mean.
It would happen
like
more.
a lot more.
So just bring in kick-ins and everyone can just get on with playing soccer.
Arena style walls, boom, solved it.
What if you like have to do a volley? Like it can't bounce, it's not a drop kick, but you have to if you just have to pick it up and toss it to yourself to volley it back into play really quickly. How about that? Because then you could do that fast, but you could still also toss it up to yourself and hit a volley 60 yards into the box.
Love it. Living, laughing, and loving that option.
Okay. I feel like at the end of the day we're leaving this one is what I'm
Nah, I took it.
On.
I'm
okay.
still taking it.
I'm taking it. Yep.
I think Justin can consider that one taken. Thank you very much indeed for that one, Justin. We're going to take one more quick break. When we come back, we're talking about moving the New England Revolution away, and we're talking about Apple and MLS getting a protagonist on their coverage. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to Take It or Leave It. We got a few more hot takes for you, listener, including this one from Rue Trialist, number 93. Great handle on Blue Sky. The New England Revolution will be the next MLS team to relocate due to poor attendance. Whew. Joe, what do we think? Is this a wicked smart idea or not?
That was good. First of all, that was wicked smart what you just did.
Thanks.
I am leaving this maybe harder than we've ever left a take. I mean, if this is about poor attendance, we're just so far off the mark here, right? Revs had the 4th highest attendance in MLS last year at 29,000 fans a game on average. There was 7th the year before at 24,000 fans. If this is about optics, we're in a completely different story because the optics of watching a game of Gillette are horrible. Truly close to the bottom of the league. Dallas is up there, especially now that they've got their far side stands that are covered with these like COVID era looking tarps because they're doing some remodeling. That one's a brutal watch. We've talked about Mercedes-Benz grass being perhaps headache inducing. There are some lows across the league. The Revs are very much in that conversation. The Revs aren't going anywhere, at least not as far as I know. I think I think we are far more likely to see the Revs in a new stadium, in their own stadium, in the next decade or next 5 years or 8. I don't know how long that stuff takes. We are so much more likely to see that because there are actual conversations happening with that than we are to see the Revolution moving. And again, attendance for them is even though it doesn't look like a strength and there's a whole separate problem there, it is a strength way more than it is a weakness.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, Joe. I was kind of surprised by the attendance figures. I like to think that
Same.
I'm sort of on top of these things as well. I do pay attention to attendance figures. So when I saw last year they were 4th in the league for attendance, that did kind of blow my mind. And it's to your point, Joe. That's the optics of it, right? They're playing in that cavernous stadium.
Did they
Gillette
play Miami
Stadium,
every week, Graham? Is just checking or not?
Possibly, but I mean that is a potential warping factor that I haven't looked into across the league last year. But yeah, they do have plans for a new stadium in Everett down by the waterside. The plans look great. I think they've encountered quite a lot of political opposition. I was reading that the Boston mayor has been quite critical of the plans. There's been accusations that she's blocked it from happening so far. So this is where I could see maybe the Revs and the Kraft family threatening to leave as like leverage to try and force through these plans. But yeah, I think ultimately they're going to find somewhere to play in the city in their own stadium, which can only be a benefit for that club. I think there are other teams in MLS that are more likely to relocate.
Okay. Taylor, you Levy?
I Levy as well for all the reasons already mentioned. Yep. I do think the Crafts have not done a great job, and I don't think I'm like blazing any new trails with that take, but I still think that they have the resources and ability to build a soccer-specific stadium and keep some interest there, whereas I think other teams are more likely to move for more immediate concerns.
Yeah, and this is, it's an uncomfortable topic, relocation, because it feels like we just went through this with the Crew, where they almost are uprooted from their location. Nobody likes this, right? I mean, the market getting a new team at the expense of another, maybe for folks who don't know exactly where the team comes from, they are probably on board with that whole situation, but it's like a really unpleasant thing even for the market receiving a new team, because it feels wrong and really icky in a lot of ways. And I know this isn't uncommon to American sports. This stuff has happened many times before. It's happened in Major League Soccer before. It almost happened with the Crew, like I said. I think we are at a stage, frankly, where some of this is maybe on the table for MLS as they're trying to figure out what the next phase of growth is. This has been a problem for MLS for a long time. Some markets that, like New England, like Dallas, that have been a part of the league for a long time, are lagging behind in a lot of ways. And I think MLS is keen to figure out ways to solve that problem. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but it'll be interesting.
I've just solved it, Joe, right here. Okay. This is going to be the
Ricky Puig and Olivier Giroud swap. No, that wasn't right.
Well, that was already factually proven correct. No, this one. Okay. They're not going to do Pro Rel, MLS. What if it's just like your 3 worst performing teams are relocated every single season to a new team, and then that new city gets the franchise and they get to try to do better for the one season. If they don't, they get moved to the next team in the order, so that you're kind of constantly giving
like
new cities an opportunity. Yeah, it's a circus model. It's a circus model of promotion relegation. I think it'll work.
I love it.
Circus FC.
Yeah.
United.
Peanuts are the only snack available. I think that's the right move.
Sorry, Vancouver, but you're playing in Phoenix this year. Oh, Phoenix didn't work out. Now you're in Vegas. And we're just going to kind of keep you bouncing around until something sticks.
I'm interested. Can I ask the three of you? You're obviously on the ground. You're more like tapped into the culture, I guess, of American soccer than I am. Do you think there's a chance?
That pronunciation. I feel like there was some. I feel like there was
pronunciation.
You're more tapped into the culture. Like,
right,
okay. So I don't know. We didn't have enough culture for you, Graham.
The culture. Yeah. Yeah, you're tapped into the culture.
The culture.
And,
okay,
so
all right.
I'm interested. Do you think well, Joe, you've just said you think relocation is possibly on the table, but do you think the Crew saga and episodes? My hope was that was kind of maybe the end of it, and the owners would look at how a fan base mobilised and how in soccer culturally it's maybe not accepted in the same way. My hope was MLS had got to a mature point where we wouldn't relocate teams again, but it sounds like Vancouver and potentially Montreal are there's rumours about them, certainly with Vancouver.
Ryan, you're shaking that head hard.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of all the other sports teams that move in all the other kind of different franchises in this country. I think culturally, part of the culture, as I am, we're not at that stage where
that's not how you say it.
Culture,
Culture.
quote unquote. Yeah, well, and
Are you telling me there aren't a lot of lakes in Los Angeles? What?
So many. I mean, they're
you know
just
Utah
everywhere.
is not famed for its jazz. Did you know that?
The basketball joke remains my favorite joke.
I think, Graham, it's telling that in the case of the Columbus Crew, Anthony Precourt's team still moved.
Yeah.
They moved to Austin, and Columbus got. I mean, it's weird and murky, right? Like Columbus didn't get a new team, but they also kind of did, and Austin got their. I mean, Precourt got what he wanted, and I think that maybe tells us what we need to know about this.
Yeah. Fair.
And I think to your point of it not happening again, there is a team close to my heart that was famously moved to a different city, and that, I believe, would never happen again in England, for sure. I think that was too damaging, and it was the only case of it ever happening, really.
But that's my point, right? Like, obviously, I know that that did happen. They did move, unlike the Crew, although maybe they did to Joe's point. But it was such a big story with the Crew and Save the Crew, and I just my hope was that people who would potentially think of it in the future would be put off by that, but maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also already happened, right? Even prior to that, like Houston exists because they moved from San Jose.
Oh
right?
yeah. It happened. It's happened a bunch of times, but. Not it hasn't really. There's not been any real momentum behind a relocation idea since the Crew, right? Until now, with some rumors
correct.
about Vancouver.
Correct, and even then, like I don't think any of the rumors or I don't think there's been a lot of really advanced discussions that have filtered out into the public eye about this. I just am sort of the mind, especially with the USL shaking and moving a little bit and putting a real like date on when they want to launch a D1 league. It feels like there is still kind of a market arms race that we're about to start seeing. And it's not really a fair fight. It's like a 3-year-old arm wrestling a 16-year-old, right? There's a real difference in financial might here, but I do think that there's going to be shifting in the markets, and that might just be addition. It might not be moving, but I think with USL targeting, expanding into more markets that have real size, markets that MLS might like, or MLS still eyeing existing USL markets, which they are very much doing in the case of Indianapolis, potentially some others as well. MLS is happy to have more teams. It certainly seems to me. How those teams come about, I think, is the question, and how USL's timeline on this impacts the speed of MLS's actions. I think all those are very real things happening and questions being asked behind the scenes right now.
Relocation is such a strange thing because it is always done for a perception of there are greener pastures, attendance isn't great, we want to kind of change the ownership, change the franchise, change whatever it is. But it so often just looks chaotic and murky right away. And I think of the NHL as the prime offender of this. I do not know who is a franchise and what franchise names are anymore. And I used to know like every single hockey team and watch hockey. But now you have so many teams that have moved, had their name changed, and then get a new team that moves there that takes the old name, that it gets very confusing very quickly. And it does make the league look a little bit more slapdash. And I think that extends to even more established ones like the NFL, where you have the Raiders kind of bouncing all over the place. It just feels very impermanent and very sort of chaotic, and I don't think that is a look Major League Soccer needs. So I hope it is very much an exception and very much a rarity, franchises moving, even if I am not sure that will end up being the case.
Yeah. And I suspect, as we've seen with the Anthony Precourt example, if there was an owner who wanted to move, they would just create a new franchise, and they could take that, right? That would be the model as the league is in its expansion phase, which it might be in for a long time. So that's probably the alternative route there. Rue Trialist, number 93. Thank you very much for your hot take. One more for this episode from Lady Eric of Dyer on the Discord. Apple and MLS need to lean in.
I know who asked this one.
It's Lady Eric of Dyer. Apple and MLS need to lean in on a likable villain player, or a dislikable villain player, if you will, and a star boy protagonist player. Okay, so I guess, Taylor, we're kind of treating Apple coverage as a dramatic piece of content at this point, if we're going to go down this route. Do we like this take? And if
haven't they already done this? Like Luis Suarez and Lionel Messi play together, and I think star boy protagonist, that's Lionel Messi. He's a young boy. I think there is some validity to this. I think when you have names that you recognize, names that you have a reason to watch or reason to keep you interested, it's always going to be a good idea. And I think a lot of times those names in sport are the best names, the goal scorers, the most fun, creative players. At the same time, villains, like go back to hockey, enforcers have a role and have sort of significance within the sport. And I think historically in soccer, villains have also done the same, and they can be Luis Suarez playing for his various teams. But I think of, we mentioned him on the Listener Questions episode, I believe, like David Ochoa was a straight up villain in the season when they knocked out Seattle. And I remember, like, I still love him for that, for how much gamesmanship, for how much the Seattle supporters truly seemed to despise him and how much he seemed to revel in it. It made that game, which was otherwise, I think, goalless over the two legs, like, really fascinating because he was just such a villain character. Rafa Marquez was a similar figure when he played in Major League Soccer, albeit briefly. But I think having those heels can make a sport more enjoyable. It can make it more interesting to watch because they can stay heels and be people you don't like and root against. They can also sort of shift over time, as I would say Pep from Portugal and Real Madrid did, and Sergio Ramos kind of the same. They become a little bit more likable because I think you have more connection to them, and when you have more connection, you learn more about them, you see more of them, you start to maybe appreciate them even if they are villains. So I do think some of that narrative would help MLS pull in some new viewers.
Yeah, totally. And Taylor, I agree with everything you just said. Ryan, I want to ask you a question. Maybe this is me reading in too deep from the way you asked Taylor.
Go on.
It seemed like you have maybe some distaste for MLS and Apple kind of being the one to drive some of this. Like, am I off base on that, or do you not like this idea?
Not necessarily. I just felt like it's trying to take a scripted drama approach to soccer, which is not a bad thing in itself, right?
Okay.
Because I suppose there are elements of that in like production planning anyway. But
Ryan, if I may, there've never been like historically an example of a team that like had some success where they were all perceived as villains and kind of over the top lunatics, like maybe had like a nickname like the Crazy Gang or something like that. Yeah, that's never been a thing, right? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
yeah, but
You were saying?
Apple didn't screw that.
Joe, the Wimbledon team that Ryan enjoys the most were all straight up villains. And,
No, we're there.
and I'm just
We're
wondering
there.
if maybe that informs Ryan's answer a little bit.
Fair point. Well taken.
I think it has to be done in a way that doesn't feel like it's turned into WWE, right? I mean, I think that would be maybe a bit too far and a bit too see-through. But I think MLS and Apple, right, should absolutely be trying to build stories and to tell stories and to build characters and the legends around some of these players. Think about someone like Zlatan. He did that himself, right? Taking out an entire page in a paper that said, Los Angeles, you're welcome, right? I mean, some players could do it on their own, but the reality is MLS doesn't have a lot of those players. And the reality, even outside of Major League Soccer, is that villains aren't exactly plentiful, right? Or at least ones that you can kind of play up in a lighthearted way versus ones that really maybe you don't actually want to talk about. So it's difficult to do. But this is something that MLS does, is they try to build up specific people from around the league for various reasons and to give them extra attention on programming, to give them extra attention on the site. And I think there's a lot of merit to that idea of what they're trying to do. I don't know that it's had a lot of success, but I do think that MLS needs more drama, more stories. That's a huge part of why people follow anything. And if you can build up some characters to fit those roles in MLS, I think you are doing something right.
And then they've got a vehicle to do it now through Onside, which was better than I was expecting it to be. And they did lean into some of the rivalry stuff, like in the episode with John Tolkien and...
Yeah, Tolkien's on my list.
Is
yeah.
it Taven Gray of NYCFC?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the Zoran versus Will Kuntz stuff to sign Marco Reus was really good as well. And that is the genius of... I kind of watch all of these shows by Box to Box. Drive to Survive, Full Swing and Onside all released a new season within 2 weeks of each other. So I just felt like I was watching all those shows all at once. And the genius of those shows, and actually Full Swing is pretty close to Drive to Survive in terms of being the gold standard. But Drive to Survive doesn't work without Christian Horner. And Ryan, I'm pretty sure you've watched some of Drive to Survive, right? You know that he revels in being the villain. He leans into it, which is the difficult part, right? Finding someone who is willing to... Yeah, but that's the difficult part, is trying to sell someone on you're going to be painted by the league and by Apple as a villain. Christian Horner doesn't seem to mind about that. And also last year, we should mention, it got a bit real with Christian Horner with some of the allegations made against him, which made that whole thing a bit uncomfortable. But if there's a second season of Onside, I would focus on a handful of players and build them up as characters. Because that was my one complaint was, and I know it's difficult, there's 30 teams, there's like 800 players in this league, and it's easier to do with Drive to Survive where there's 20 drivers. But I would focus on having Zoran in a bunch of episodes, not just having him in one episode. I'd have Pat Noonan in a bunch of episodes. I think they tried to build up Kevin Sullivan as someone to root for. I actually came out of that episode rooting for Quinn more than Kevin Sullivan. So to that point, don't necessarily fixate on the big names. I mean, in Drive to Survive, Gunter Steiner, who was the team principal for Haas, one of the worst teams in F1, became like this star. He sells books and everything now. He's this superstar of F1. The big names don't necessarily equate to the best storylines, and so focus on like 20 players over the course of a season, or 20 players and managers, and bring them back over the course of episodes. Don't just do one episode on them. That would be my advice.
Yeah, definitely. Haas,
I agree.
Star of Charlotte, North Carolina, by the way. Just saying.
I agree with some of this, but I go the other way. I want full-on WWE. I want, like, the Stone Cold glass break music. I want the announcer screaming, like, good God, that's Diego Chara's music. He runs on, 2-foot somebody in the chest, runs off, like, and then the other team scores. The ref didn't see it happen. Let's lean into this a little bit. Let's go full villain.
I like that a lot.
I like it. I also like it, Taylor. But I think putting my PR hat on, the league and Apple would have to be careful on which villain they backed, because if things get too villainous, if we talk about sort of Christian Horner as an example, like that could put them in a problematic situation. I don't know. Giorgio Chiellini to some people is a light-hearted heel villain, but to some others he's a disgrace to humanity.
Right.
So,
remember that Giorgio Chiellini thing that Graham did? That's the greatest thing that's ever happened in the last 4 years on this show. That was amazing. Yeah, I mean, you do have to pick people carefully. And I was trying to think of who fits these criteria, right? And honestly, I had a difficult time. I don't think MLS has a lot of obvious villains right now. The ones I kind of ended up with, John Tolkien, now that he's gone, I think he would have been a great fit for this in some ways. He's also a fullback, and I don't know. There's only so much you can do there. Sorry, John. Evander and Lucho were the ones that came to mind for me, forcing their ways out of their respective teams this past offseason. You can kind of play that up a little bit, narrative-wise, but it's so hard to find extended ways to do this, which is, I think, why Onside is such a great shout from you, Graham. And as far as I know, those box-to-box crews are still following people around this year.
Okay,
So I don't know if we're going to get another season. I don't know exactly what's happening there. Do know that costs a lot of money, so we'll see how that actually pans out. The hero angle is way easier to do, right? You mentioned Kevin Sullivan being a big theme of that doc. Diego Luna is another one that came to mind for me. I feel like MLS actually does a pretty good job of building up some of these heroes. It's just difficult because the Zlatan personas don't come around very often.
It's also difficult because they could leave, right? In F1,
and they will.
They
very much will.
There's nowhere for the best drivers to go. You could decide at the start of a season, right, we're going to focus on Diego Luna, really build him up, and by the summer, he's in Europe.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And that's where I think you see MLS turn to people like Ricky Puig, who was a big feature in that docuseries. And that's helped with the Galaxy. But Ricky Puig is like a pretty likable figure, pretty lighthearted, small dude who was jersey super baggy on him. And he doesn't like maybe fit your expectations of what a professional athlete looks like in the United States. I think that's fun. And he's got a good story, and the intertwining with Messi, I think, fits really well. And then he gets injured, and that ruins a lot of this year. So who knows? But I do think that Lady Eric of Dyer is absolutely onto something here.
They are indeed. Thank you very much for that.
Why not Eric Dyer, since he's such a mediocre defender? We could just get him in to be the villain. What would go wrong there?
The views of Taylor Rockwell did not necessarily represent the views of the Tell Soccer Show.
Hi, Jackie.
They may also.
Excellent disclaimer. That is Take It or Leave It for another episode. Thank you very much. If you'd like to send us a hot take for this episode, you can get on our Discord, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, to access all of our bonus content. Thank you very much indeed. Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much for Tioling one more time. Good to be back.
I enjoyed it. My pleasure. I am now just fully into the idea of scripting villains into Major League Soccer, and I'm all about it.
When you start getting into the idea of scripting soccer, things get a bit dangerous.
Match fixie?
A little bit yes.
Allegedly.
Calciopoli
So
the charining.
2022 World Cup MVP, Lucas Paqueta, Graham. Have a lot of respect.
Of course, yeah.
Joe Lowry, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Ryan.
Graham Ruthven, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
And listener, thank you the mostest. You have yourself a wonderful weekend. We'll be back on the feed very shortly indeed. But for now, bye.